"You don't belong here," my golden brother said at his launch party after I paid his tuition and rent for 3 years. So I pulled the plug and let it all burn. Hey Reddit, this happened a few months ago. I supported my younger brother and covered every family emergency. Then I found out they were throwing a launch part his new business. Like the good brother I am, I showed up. That's when I realized I wasn't welcome. "You should have asked if you were invited," my dad said while my brother bragged to his friends like he built everything himself, never mentioning who actually paid for it all. I didn't argue. I just cut them off and let everything collapse. Buckle up. This one's long, but you definitely want to read it. For 3 years, I, 32, male, played emergency fund and part-time dad to my younger brother, 24 male, Brody. Covered his rent, his tuition, and whatever new crisis popped up each month. Car issues, overpriced gadgets, career-boosting trips. Meanwhile, I was grinding 50-hour weeks as an industrial electrician, living in a shoebox apartment, and eating the same damn chicken and rice every night just to stay afloat. Like last winter, I had to postpone my dental work for 4 months because Brody needed emergency tuition assistance when he failed 2 classes and had to retake them. That tooth gave me hell every time I drank something cold, but I gritted through it because family comes first. My supervisor Dave noticed me wincing during lunch one day. "Tooth still bothering you?" When I explained I was waiting until next quarter to get it fixed, he just shook his head. "Man, you're sending your brother to college while you're walking around with a broken tooth. That math doesn't add up." I grew up in a lower middle-ass household in the Midwest. Dad worked at the local factory. Mom was a receptionist at a dentist's office. We weren't poor, but there wasn't much extra. I was an only child until I was 9. Then Brody showed up, and suddenly the family dynamic shifted overnight. New toys appeared. Private soccer lessons materialized. When I needed new shoes for school, I got Walmart specials. When Brody needed them, we drove 2 hours to the Nike outlet. Uncle Lou, my dad's older brother, was the only one who ever called it out. He'd been a diesel mechanic for 30 years before retiring and spent most weekends tinkering with his collection of vintage motorcycles. "You're getting the shaft, kid," he'd tell me when I'd hang around his garage. He taught me how to change oil, replace spark plugs, and troubleshoot electrical issues when nobody else had the time. I started working when I was 15, bagging groceries after school. By 17, I was doing oil changes at the local garage. My parents never offered to help with gas money or my beater car's maintenance. "You're earning your own money now. You can handle it," Dad would say. Meanwhile, they bought Brody a truck for his 16th birthday. I moved out at 18, bounced between construction jobs, and eventually landed an apprenticeship with an electrical contractor. Those 4 years were brutal. 5 a.m. wake-ups, manual labor all day, night classes 3 times a week. My buddy Paul, who I met during the apprenticeship, became like the brother I never had. We'd split rent on a crappy 2-bedroom carpool to job sites and cover for each other when one of us was broke. No judgment, no keeping score, just genuine support. Paul and I met on what had to be the worst job site of my apprenticeship. It was January 10 degree, with the wind cutting right through our Carhartts. We were on the second floor of an office building with no windows installed yet. The foreman, an old-timer named Donovan, who spent more time on his phone than actually working, had paired us up to run conduit. While Donovan sat in his truck with the heater blasting, Paul and I got our asses handed to us by freezing metal conduit that felt like ice when you touched it. Around noon, I noticed Paul hadn't taken a break. "You eat yet?" I asked. "Nah, forgot my lunch," he said, fingers numb as he tried to bend a piece of conduit. I pulled out my sandwich and split it in half, handed him part without saying a word. He nodded and took it. That was pretty much it. We finished the job, fingers nearly frostbitten, while Donovan took a 2-hour lunch. When it came time to leave, Paul just said, "Same tomorrow." Yep. Next day, he brought 2 coffees, handed me one. We worked like that for 3 weeks before I even knew his last name. No small talk, just 2 guys getting the job done while the foreman took credit. That's how real friendships start. "Dude, your family is taking advantage of you," Paul would tell me whenever I'd mention sending money home. He wasn't wrong, but I kept thinking things would change once they saw I was serious about my career. I passed my journeyman exam on the first try, got my contractor's license at 26, started picking up side jobs on weekends. Slowly built a reputation as the guy who shows up on time and doesn't cut corners. By 28, I had $40,000 saved up. Not life-changing money, but enough to feel secure for the first time. It was around then that Paul and I spotted it. A 1967 Mustang Fastback sitting behind a barn on a property where we were doing some electrical work. The thing was in rough shape. Faded Highland green paint, rust eating through the quarter panels, interior that looked like animals had been living in it. The owner, an older guy named Frank, noticed us eyeing it during lunch. "You boys like that car?" he asked. "Hell yeah," Paul said. "That's a 67 Fastback." Frank laughed. "Been sitting there for 15 years. My son was going to restore it, but he moved to California. Give me $2,000 and it's yours." We pulled our money, $1,200 from me, $800 from Paul, and dragged that beast home. The next weekend, our apartment complex manager let us use a corner of the back lot to work on it, and we spent every free Sunday getting it running again. New fuel lines, rebuilt carburetor, patched floors. It was slow going, but it was ours. Then came the first emergency. Brody had flunked out of his original college after partying for 2 years. My parents called me in tears. "He just needs another chance, a fresh start. You're doing so well now." I offered to help with his first semester at the new school just to get him back on track. That one-time offer somehow morphed into an expected monthly contribution. My mom would text me the tuition due date with just the amount and a smiley face. No please or thank you, like I was just another bill to be paid. The Mustang project went from every Sunday to maybe once a month. Every time we'd make progress, another emergency with Brody would pop up. New transmission for the Fastback? Nope. Brody needed security deposit money. Fresh paint job. Sorry. Brody's fraternity dues were due. Paul never complained, just shook his head when I'd cancel our garage time. Eventually, we covered the car with a tarp in the back lot, and it sat there collecting dust while my bank account collected overdraft fees. "That car is the perfect metaphor for your life," Paul said one night as we drove past it on our way home. All that potential just sitting there while you pour money into your brother's black hole. There were weekends when I'd work 16-hour days back to back, taking on emergency callouts that paid double, but left me so exhausted I could barely drive home. One Saturday night, I was replacing a failed circuit breaker at a restaurant downtown, my 4th job that day. My hands were cramping so badly, I dropped my screwdriver twice. The restaurant owner brought me a coffee and asked if I was okay. "Just tired," I told him. Big weekend. What I didn't say was that Brody had 3 days earlier saying he needed $800 for a business leadership conference that was mandatory for his degree program. Turned out, it was an optional weekend event that his fraternity brothers were all attending. I once spent 14 hours on a rooftop job in December. The client, a grocery store with an HVAC system on the fritz, needed power restored before their refrigeration failed. It was 25 degrees with a steady drizzle that would freeze as soon as it hit any surface, including my hands. By hour 10, I couldn't feel my toes. By hour 12, I was hallucinating that the conduit was moving on its own. When I finally finished, the store manager handed me an envelope with a $200 cash bonus. "You're the only guy who would come out in this weather," he said. Everyone else wanted to wait until morning. I nodded, stumbled to my truck, and sat with the heater blasting for 20 minutes before I could feel my face again. That bonus went straight to Brody's cell phone bill, which he'd forgotten to pay for 3 months. At another job, I dozed off sitting in my truck between service calls. It was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I'd already been up for 11 hours after being on call the night before. I woke up to a text from my mom asking if I could send Brody an extra $300 for networking materials. I didn't even ask what that meant anymore, just sent the money and pounded another energy drink before my next call. Paul would notice the patterns. We'd planned camping trips months in advance. Then I'd back out last minute because Brody had another financial crisis. "You missed Jeff's bachelor party to work overtime for Brody's car insurance." Paul pointed out once, "You realize you haven't done anything fun in like 6 months, right?" He wasn't exaggerating. My work boots had worn through soles because I kept putting off replacing them, but I'd sent Brody money that same week for textbooks. Paul was dealing with his own customers from hell by then. He'd started a side business doing residential electrical work. And the stories he'd bring back were comedy gold. Got a guy today who wanted me to rewire his entire garage. He told me one night as we split a pizza. When I gave him the quote, he asked if I'd take exposure instead of money. Said he's an influencer with 200 followers. Did you ask him if the power company takes exposure for the electric bill? I replied. Told him I'd give him exposure to a working garage door if he paid me. These little moments, Paul's horror stories, our running jokes about customers, were the only normal parts of my life. Everything else was just working and sending money to Brody. It's just temporary, my dad assured me, even as his golf club membership renewed and my mom posted Facebook photos of their weekend getaways. Brody's going to be successful soon, and he'll pay you back tenfold. Last Christmas, I drove to my parents' place to drop off gifts. Dad had just gotten a new 65 TV. I could see the empty box in the garage as I pulled in. My F-150's transmission had been slipping for weeks, and I was saving up for the $2,200 repair bill, eating ramen 3 nights a week to stretch my budget. Inside, my parents were decorating the tree. Mom immediately started telling me about Brody's amazing business plan and how he'd been networking with real entrepreneurs. Dad chimed in. He's got the mind for strategy. Always has. Neither of them asked a single question about my contracting business, which had just landed its first commercial wiring project. When I left, I noticed the porch light was flickering. Bad wiring, probably a loose connection. I can fix that for you before I go, I offered. Dad just waved me off. We'll get someone to look at it. You're off duty. It's Christmas. The following week, my mom called asking if I could come fix the light because the electrician wants $85 just to come out. I drove over after a full day on a job site, fixed it in 10 minutes, and left. No thanks. No offer of dinner. Not even a cold drink. Just make sure you lock the gate on your way out. Uncle Lou called me the day after. Heard you fixed your dad's porch light? They offer you anything for it? Nope. Figures. Your old man always was a cheap bastard. Hey, stop by the garage sometime. Got a new Harley engine I'm rebuilding. I promised I would, but knew I probably wouldn't have time. Between work and covering Brody's expenses, there weren't enough hours in the day. The irony? I was the one actually running a successful business. My electrical contracting had grown from weekend side gigs to having 3 guys working under me. I was making good money, but reinvesting most of it back into equipment, insurance, and building my client base. From the outside, it probably looked like I was rolling in cash. The reality was, I'd moved into a slightly better apartment, but was still driving my 2009 F-150 with 210,000 memers on it. Brody, meanwhile, changed majors twice before settling on business administration, with a focus on entrepreneurship, whatever the hell that means. He posted daily on LinkedIn about hustle culture and grinding, but somehow never had time for a part-time job between his classes 3 days a week. Things came to a head about 6 months before the launch party. My parents called a family meeting at their house. I showed up straight from a job site, still in my work clothes. Brody was there in pressed chinos and a button-down. My parents sat us down in the living room. The same room where the TV I'd never use was mounted on the wall. Dean, we need to discuss your commitment to this family, my dad started. I looked at the 3 of them staring at me and knew exactly where this was headed. Broy's business is at a critical stage. Mom chimed in. He needs capital for inventory, marketing, office space. And I'm supposed to provide that, I asked. You've always been the responsible one, she said, like it was a compliment. The business will take off soon, and then you'll get everything back, plus interest. I glanced at Brody, who was examining his manicured fingernails. I've already put in over $20,000. When does his responsibility kick in? Dad's face hardened. This attitude isn't helpful. Your brother has vision. He needs support, not criticism. He needs a job, I replied. That's when Brody finally spoke up. A job? Like climbing poles? Some of us have bigger aspirations than just being a glorified handyman. The room went silent. My mom looked uncomfortable, but didn't correct him. We need an answer today, my dad said finally. Are you going to help your brother or not? Not. Dad stood up. Then I don't think we have anything else to discuss. If you can't be there for family when it matters, maybe you shouldn't consider yourself part of this family. Is that a threat? I asked. It's reality, he replied. I looked around the room at the family photos on the wall, the new furniture, the kitchen renovation I'd helped pay for when Mom wanted to refresh the space. None of this was mine. It never had been. I guess I'll see myself out, I said, standing up. As I walked to the door, Mom called after me. Dean, please, he's your brother. Think about what you're doing. I didn't answer, just got in my truck and left. When I got back to my apartment, Paul was on the couch watching a basketball game. One look at my face told him everything he needed to know. Family meeting went well, I take it. Got disowned. He handed me a drink from the fridge. Congratulations, you're an orphan. Now, maybe you can afford to fix the Mustang. The breaking point came last week. I noticed images filling up the family group chat. Outdoor tables, blue and gold decorations, catered food, and a fancy cake that said future business leader in some pretentious cursive font. Aunt Martha had already posted pictures on Facebook, so proud of my nephew launching his business venture, the next Zuckerberg. I waited a few days, then texted my mom, "What's this launch party I'm seeing photos of?" Her reply came back instantly. Brook Hill Event Center. Same place we had Vanessa's wedding reception. No explanation, no apology for not inviting me directly. Just an address like she was sharing a weather forecast. I didn't ask who would be there. The group chat already showed Uncle Wesley, all the cousins, even Grandpa was coming in from Florida. They were throwing a massive celebration for Brody's new business venture, one funded largely by my money, and nobody even bothered to invite me. I called Paul. Am I overreacting here? I asked him, dude, you've been paying this kid's bills for years, and they didn't even invite you to the party. That's next level disrespect. He said, what are you going to do? I'm going to show up. Paul offered to come as backup, but I knew this was something I needed to handle alone. I live in Elmwood, about 40 minutes from my parents' place. I threw on a clean button-down, my least-twin jeans, and drove out to Brook Hill. The venue was lit up with strings of outdoor lights, valet parking attendants directing luxury cars. I parked my truck myself, ignoring the valet's confused look. At the entrance, security stopped me. This is a private celebration, one of them said. Actual security guards for a business launch with my money. I'm his brother, I replied. The guard looked skeptical, asked for my name, and walked back inside. I stood there for nearly 10 minutes watching guests arrive. One guy in a tailored suit looked at me and asked if I was with the catering staff. Just waiting, I said. He nodded and walked away. A woman with professionally done makeup and a designer dress I recognized from my ex-girlfriend's fashion magazines approached me. Are you here to fix the lighting in the West Pavilion? The manager said someone was coming. No, I'm Brody's brother, I replied. Her eyebrows shot up. Oh, I didn't realize he had a brother. Are you younger? I'm 32. Brody is 24. But something about my work boots and the truck keys in my hand made her assume I was the younger one. The guard finally returned with Brody, my mom and my dad. Brody was wearing a tailored blue suit that probably cost more than I spend on clothes in a year. He was holding some fancy cocktail, looking annoyed that his big moment was being interrupted. He doesn't need to be here, he told the guards, barely acknowledging me. I actually laughed, thinking this had to be some weird joke. Then I saw my dad nod in agreement. You really showed up? My dad asked. After everything you've been saying recently, I haven't said a word to anyone. I answered genuinely confused. My mom stepped in, her voice switching to that fake nice tone she uses with the neighbors she gossips about. Dean, this day was meant to be a networking event for Brody's investors. We didn't want any complications. I paid his rent for 3 years. I covered his tuition, and I'm the one causing problems. Brody scoffed. You didn't do it for me. You only help so you can lord it over everyone. You're just jealous because Dad finally has a son who's going to make something of himself instead of climbing electrical poles for a living. I stood there letting that sink in. 3 years of support, thousands of dollars. Countless times I'd skipped trips with friends because Brody needs help with his security deposit. Or Brody's car needs new tires. Then you're welcome, I said flatly. He just turned and walked back inside like I was some random door-to-door salesman. My dad shrugged. Maybe you should have asked if you were invited. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just said, noted, and I left. As I walked back to my truck, I passed a group of guys about Brody's age, all in similar expensive suits. One of them looked at me, squinted, then said, "Hey, don't I know you from somewhere?" It was Kyle, Brody's roommate from his first college, the one I'd helped move furniture for, whose car I jumped when the battery died during winter break 2 years ago. "I'm Brody's brother," I said. "No way. I didn't know Brody had a brother." He turned to his friends. "This guy's brother is crushing it tonight. You should see the setup inside." They had no idea who had actually funded the crushing it setup inside. I just nodded and kept walking. The drive home was a blur. No music, just the sound of my tires on the highway and the realization that I'd been played for years. I'd always thought helping my family was the right thing to do, that eventually they'd appreciate it. I just stood there watching them close ranks, all to protect Brody from the embarrassment of his blue-collar brother showing up. I pulled into my apartment complex, parked next to Paul's truck. He'd been waiting for me, and we walked inside without a word. He grabbed 2 sodas from my fridge while I sat down at my kitchen table and pulled out my phone. "What are you thinking?" Paul asked as I started typing. "I'm done," I replied, sending a text to Brody. "Starting immediately. You'll need to cover your own expenses, all of them." Then I opened my laptop and got to work. First, I logged into my bank account and canceled all scheduled transfers to Brody. Then I pulled up the lease agreement I'd co-signed for his apartment. I'd made sure there was an out clause when I signed. One of the few smart moves I'd made in this whole situation. I filled out the form to remove myself as guarantor and sent it to the property management company. "You co-signed his lease?" Paul asked, looking over my shoulder. "And his car loan?" I replied, pulling up that account next. Brody had missed 2 payments already, which I'd covered without telling him. I contacted the bank and explained I wouldn't be making any more payments on his behalf. They warned me it would impact my credit if he defaulted, but I had documentation showing I'd made all previous payments. This would help in court if needed. Paul pulled a chair next to me. "Man, you should have seen your face when you walked in." I knew it was bad, but he shook his head. "What about that supply company you said he was working with? Didn't you put down some kind of deposit there too?" He was right. I'd forgotten about the $2,000 equipment deposit I'd fronted for Brody's initial inventory order. I found the email from the supplier and shot them a message explaining that I was no longer financially involved in the business. "What about the money they already owe you?" Paul asked. Good question. I dug through my email, finding every transfer confirmation, every text where Brody or my parents had acknowledged the money was a loan. "Need another loan for books. We'll pay you back when my business takes off. Just one more loan until next semester." I compiled everything, organized by date, and forwarded it all to my email. Around 1:00 p.m., my phone blew up. First Brody, then my mom, then my dad. I didn't answer. Then texts started coming in. "WTF? The bank called about the car payment. You can't just back out of the lease like that. Call us right now." I turned off notifications and went to bed. Paul crashed on my couch, saying he wanted to be there when the really hits the fan. He wasn't wrong. The next morning at 6 a.m., someone was banging on my door. It was Brody, still wearing clothes from the night before, looking panicked. "What the hell are you doing?" He demanded when I opened the door. Exactly what I said I would. "You're on your own now. You can't just pull out of everything overnight. I have investors now, a reputation to maintain. Should have thought about that before you called me the pole-climbing loser in front of everyone." His face went pale. "You heard that? Your friend Kyle was recording your speech, posted it on Instagram, tagged everyone." He hadn't known that part. I hadn't either until cousin Olivia sent me the clip late last night. Brody had been giving a toast, thanking everyone who believed in him, then made a joke about how even my brother, the electrician, contributed, though he doesn't know it. He's basically our family ATM. Always good for a withdrawal, but not exactly boardroom material. Everyone laughed. Everyone laughed. My parents loudest of all. "It was just a joke," he said. "Don't be so sensitive." "I'm not being sensitive. I'm being practical. You're 24 years old with a business degree. Figure it out. I can't make the rent without you. The launch is taking all my capital. Not my problem anymore. He switched tactics. Mom and Dad will have to cover it then. Is that what you want? They're getting older. They can't afford this. They managed to throw you a party at Brook Hill with an open bar and catering. They'll figure something out. He tried for another hour. Threats, guilt, even fake apologies. Nothing worked. Finally, he left, slamming the door behind him. Paul came out of the bedroom, having listened to the whole thing. "You handled that like a pro," he said. "What's next?" That afternoon, I contacted a lawyer, brought all my documentation, every transfer, every text message where Brody or my parents acknowledged the money was a loan, not a gift. The lawyer was impressed with my record keeping. "Most family financial disputes are a mess," he told me. "But you've got timestamps, acknowledgments, consistent patterns. We can work with this." We drafted a demand letter for repayment of $27,450 in outstanding loans. "They probably won't pay," the lawyer warned me. "That's fine," I replied. "I just wanted it on record." 3 days later, the first domino fell. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was someone named Jason from SupplyWise Distribution. "I'm trying to reach Brody regarding his outstanding invoice," he said. "He gave us your number as an alternate contact." "I'm not affiliated with his business," I told him, "and I'm not covering any expenses." "Oh," long pause. "He indicated you were the financial backer." "Not anymore." 10 minutes after that call ended, Brody texted, "What the hell did you say to my supplier?" I didn't respond. The next day, I got an email from someone named Darian introducing himself as an angel investor in Brody's company. He was politely inquiring about certain financial discrepancies that had come to light and wanted to verify the status of the family funding component Brody had outlined in his business plan. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, who advised me on a carefully worded response, explaining that I had no financial involvement in the businesses and had never agreed to be part of any investment structure. What followed was a systematic dismantling of the house of cards my brother had built. 5 days after the party, Brody's Instagram went dark. No more daily motivation quotes or business updates. A mutual friend texted me, "Heard Brody's freaking out about money." What happened? 3 days later, his car was repossessed. A week after that, he received an eviction notice. His business venture, some drop-shipping scheme selling overpriced fitness supplements, fell apart when he couldn't make payments to his suppliers. The real beauty of it, I didn't have to do anything active. I just stopped preventing the natural consequences of his actions from catching up to him. All those years, I'd been the invisible safety net. Now, gravity was doing its thing. 2 weeks after the party, Ryan, one of my regular clients who owns a gym, texted me, "Just got the weirdest call from your brother trying to sell me on some supplements." When I mentioned I know you, he hung up. A local business owner I'd done electrical work for emailed asking if I knew anything about Pinnacle Fitness Solutions, Brody's company, because they'd put in a large order, then suddenly stopped responding to communications. It was like watching a building implode from a safe distance. No explosives needed. Just remove the support beams and let physics take over. Uncle Lou called me as everything was going down. "Heard your brother's business is taking a nosedive. That have anything to do with you?" "Just stopped covering his bills," I replied. "About damn time," he said. "Never understood why you were bankrolling that kid to begin with. Your parents sure as hell never helped you that way." "Yeah, well, lesson learned. You doing okay?" he asked. "Your dad's telling everyone you screwed the family over." "I'm fine," I told him. "Better, actually. Good. Family ain't always blood. Remember that. Some people earn the title. Others just expect it." My parents finally showed up at my apartment 2 weeks later. My mom was crying. My dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. Paul was over helping me pack some boxes. I'd already decided to take the Denver job, and he just nodded at them when they walked in, then continued taping up a box of kitchen stuff, giving us space but staying within earshot. "You've destroyed your brother's life?" my dad said. "Was that your goal?" "Number one goal was to stop enabling him. There's a difference. He's moving back home." My mom said between sobs, "His credit is ruined. The investors pulled out when they found out about the eviction." "That's unfortunate," I said. "We need help." My dad admitted, looking like each word physically pained him. "Your mom's medication costs went up, and with Brody moving home." I cut him off. "I'm not giving you money." We're family, he insisted. Were we family when you laughed at Brody calling me an ATM? Were we family when you left me off the guest list for the party my money helped pay for? Were we family when you bought him a car for his 16th birthday while I was working at the grocery store to pay for my own gas? They had no answer for that. My mom tried a different approach. You've always been the responsible one, Dean, the strong one. Brody just needs more time to find his path. He's had 8 years of college and 3 business attempts. Time isn't the issue. My dad switched tactics. Your business is doing well. Everyone in town says you're the best electrician around. Would it really hurt you to help out a little while Brody gets back on his feet? Yes, it would hurt me. It's been hurting me for years. My mom wiped her eyes. Remember when you were little and you said you wanted to be just like your dad? Taking care of the family, being the man of the house. I was 8, and I did take care of the family financially, at least more than either of you. From the corner, Paul cleared his throat. My parents glanced at him, clearly uncomfortable having this conversation with an audience. The loan repayment paperwork is filed with the county, I told them. When you're ready to start paying that back, let me know. My dad's face hardened. This isn't over. Actually, it is. After they left, Paul looked at me. You okay? Better than I've been in years. I made 2 calls. First to my boss at the electrical company, accepting the promotion I'd been offered 3 times, but kept turning down because it required relocation to Denver. Then to a realtor about listing my apartment. The next 3 weeks were quiet, almost suspiciously so. Then Olivia texted again. Brody had to sell all his designer clothes on eBay. Mom's telling everyone you abandoned the family. A week later, Dad's asking relatives for loans. Nobody's giving them money. Then Brody's business officially filed for bankruptcy. He had to surrender his laptop as part of the proceedings. I didn't respond to any of these, just kept packing, working, and planning my move. Paul helped me pack up my life into a U-Haul. I'm gonna miss you, man, he said, but this is the right move. Clean break. He was right. As long as I stayed in town, they'd find ways to pull me back in. Mutual friends, family events, running into them at the grocery store. I needed distance, not just emotional, but physical. The Denver job came with a supervisor position, a $25,000 raise, and actual benefits. The company needed someone to manage their commercial projects, and my reputation for reliability had preceded me. For the first time in my life, I felt like my hard work was being recognized. 2 months later, I'm writing this from my new place in Denver. 3 bedrooms, mountain view, twice the square footage of my old apartment. The company gave me a $20,000 signing bonus and a company truck, a 2023 F-250 that still smells new. I've been putting in solid hours building my team and already got handed 2 major projects based on my performance. I've got a morning routine now. Up at 5:30, coffee on the balcony, watching the sun hit the mountains before heading to the job site. There's something about drinking that first cup without waiting for my phone to light up with some financial emergency from Brody. My new team lead, Jason, noticed my truck in the parking lot yesterday. That thing is clean, man. You must take good care of your stuff. Try to, I replied. Simple as that. A month into the Denver job, Paul flew out for a weekend. We'd been texting about the Mustang, which he'd placed after I left. Still got the car, he'd write. She starts if you whisper kind words and kick the fender twice. He'd been steadily working on it, sending me progress photos. New rear quarter panels, interior all stripped out and replaced, engine rebuild almost complete. When he arrived at my place with a duffel bag full of parts, I knew exactly what we'd be doing for the next 2 days. Brought the new distributor and carb kit, he said, dropping the bag in my living room. Found a guy who rebuilt the original. Should fit better than the aftermarket crap we were looking at. We flew back the following weekend. Paul had rented a garage space near his place where the Mustang sat, looking almost unrecognizable from the junker we dragged home years ago. The Highland green paint had been redone, not some fancy show car finish, just solid workmanship. The interior was simple black vinyl, period correct, but nothing flashy. You finished the wiring harness? I said, noticing the clean installation under the dash. Yeah, figured an electrician's car should at least have functioning lights. He tossed me the keys. Want to see if she runs? 5 years of on and off work, thousands of dollars in parts, and countless weekends, all compressed into the sound of that 289 V8 turning over and catching on the first try. The exhaust note through the glass pack mufflers wasn't too loud, just a deep, steady rumble that felt right. We spent that Saturday tightening the last few bolts, adjusting the timing, and making sure nothing was leaking. By Sunday morning, we were ready for the first real drive, a 50-mile loop on country roads we'd mapped out years ago for this exact moment. I called dibs on blasting Metallica once we hit that straight stretch on County Road 8. Paul said as I backed the car out of the garage. The Mustang drove like you'd expect a 50-year-old car to drive. Stiff, mechanical, connected to the road in a way modern cars aren't. No power steering, no ABS, no traction control, just raw feedback through the wheel and pedals. We didn't talk much during that drive, just watched the scenery roll by, felt the engine pull through each gear, and listened to Master of Puppets with the windows down once we hit that straight stretch. When we pulled back into the garage that evening, Paul just nodded at the car. Worth the wait? Definitely. We stood there for a minute, just looking at what we'd built. You know what's the best part? Paul asked. What's that? Nobody in your family even knows this exists. It's just yours. He was right. The car represented everything I'd built without them. Friendship, skill, patience, the things I'd learned in those 5 years had nothing to do with seeking approval or buying love. It was just about the work itself. You keeping it here or shipping it to Denver? Paul asked. Denver already lined up a garage space. Last weekend, I spent the whole day hiking in the foothills. No calls to return, no side jobs to rush to, no guilty feeling about spending money on myself. Just me, the trails, and the realization that my bank account had nearly doubled since cutting off the financial bleeding. Meanwhile, I haven't heard from Brody or my parents since they showed up begging for money. Last week, I got a text from cousin Olivia. Brody's business is officially bankrupt. Parents reorgaged their house to cover his debts. They've been asking family for your new number. I didn't respond. I blocked Olivia's number too. This morning, I closed on a small rental property near the university here. The kind of smart investment I could have made years ago if I hadn't been pouring money into the bottomless pit that was my brother's life. Uncle Lou was the only one who got my new number. He texted last month, "You did the right thing, kid. They made their bed." I keep the Mustang in a garage 3 blocks from my apartment. Some weekends, I take it up into the mountains, pushing it through tight corners on empty roads. Other times, it sits for weeks while I focus on work or the rental property. Sometimes I think about how long I let them use me, how many years I wasted trying to buy their approval. But mostly, I think about how much better my life is now that I'm not carrying them all. I can actually see a future that doesn't involve supporting people who never supported me. The family ATM is permanently closed, and my life is finally open for business.